That was Lord Darragh. We'll hear a little more from him later in the programme. But joining us now, David Gauke, the former Lord Chancellor, and Ben Habib, businessman and former member of the European Parliament for the Brexit Party. Welcome to you both. And David Gauke, if I can start with you. We heard Brandon Lewis this afternoon admit the proposals would entail the breaking of international law. Was it quite a moment for you?
Yeah, an extraordinary thing to say, and I suppose maybe some credit to Brandon for being quite so direct and candid. But it is an extraordinary set of circumstances for the government to acknowledge that it is going to break the law, and all ministers have to sign the ministerial code in favour of supporting the rule of law. Some other ministers have additional oaths to swear. And it must be very uncomfortable for all ministers to find themselves in these circumstances. And, however much one might say this is, very limited and very specific, I can't think of a similar circumstance. I mean, interesting, Nick Watt referred to the 2013 Finance Act. I was the junior Treasury Minister at the time, and there's certainly no comparison whatsoever with the circumstances that we're in here. We're essentially rewriting a treaty that we agreed only a few months ago, that Parliament passed earlier this year. And because we now say we don't like some of the provisions, we're going to rewrite it. That is an extraordinary set of circumstances.
You talked about that oath, which was one that you swore as Lord Chancellor. Can I ask you, would you be able to stay in the government if they went ahead with those proposals when you'd sign the oath? That's the position, of course, that Robert Buckland and Suella Braverman now find themselves in.
Well, I suppose, in all honesty, there are so many circumstances where I'd find it difficult to stay in this government that I'm not sure that this is just one more. But look, I think it must be difficult for ministers who have particular responsibilities in this area. I don't particularly want to personalise it, but yes, it must be uncomfortable for actually anyone who feels strongly about the rule of law. If we find ourselves in the situation where the government is, quite openly saying we are going to defy international law.
Ben Habib, do you feel strongly about the rule of law?
I do feel strongly about the rule of law, and I think that David makes some very powerful points. But the critical issue here is, what is our UK law? And what the government, as I understand it, because we haven't seen the legislation yet, is seeking to do is to alter domestic law. So actually it would be complying with UK law. And by doing so, I think it's seeking to circumvent some terms of the withdrawal agreement.
So just to clarify, you heard the Minister this afternoon say it would break international law and our obligation. But does that not matter to you?
Well, if I could just finish, Emily. So the issue I think the government's going to grapple with, without being too nerdy on Brexit, is Article 4 of the withdrawal agreement, which basically says that UK courts have to disregard domestic law in favour of the provisions of the withdrawal agreement if they conflict. So even if the Prime Minister tries to prevent from EU state aid law from creeping into the United Kingdom, even if he tries to prevent customs declarations for goods coming in from Northern Ireland, I think he's going to find it very hard doing so.
With respect, you're making it sound more complicated than it is. They signed up to this in December. They won the election. He said there was an oven-ready deal, all the rest of it.
Absolutely.
They all signed up to it, and now they're talking about having to rewrite something that would break international law. And I'm asking whether that doesn't matter.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the point is that it wasn't an oven-ready deal. It wasn't a fantastic deal. And as you might recall, Emily, throughout the period of the general election and ever since, I've been banging the table saying, actually, that the withdrawal agreement is an awful agreement because, in part, it leaves Northern Ireland bereft. And if I can just go back to what the Prime Minister is trying to achieve...
So, you're saying whatever they have to do is worth doing to get to where you want to be, even if it means breaking international law?
Actually, the Prime Minister isn't being bold enough.
David Gauke.
Well, I think, Ben and I agree that there were plenty of flaws in the withdrawal agreement, but to be honest, that is what the Conservative Party won the last general election on. And if we are to walk away from that as a country, this is not just some theoretical point. This will damage our standing internationally, as Kim Darroch has pointed out. It will make it harder for us to enter into all these free trade agreements with other countries. It undermines the rule of law generally, which is at the heart of what we are about as a country. It's one of our proudest achievements that as a nation we've been a strong upholder of the rule of law. It leaves us in a very difficult position with Northern Ireland. What happens in terms of the Irish border? Do we undermine the peace process? We thought that was a matter that had been dealt with, but it reopens all of that. These are pretty serious points.
Let me bring in Ben Habib. It seems hard to understand how you could make any valid point about British sovereignty if what we're doing is proving, in the words of Theresa May or David Gauke or Kim Darroch, we simply can't be trusted. How does that get us anywhere?
Well, I completely disagree that we can't be trusted. You have to go back and look at how...
we can't be trusted to stick by our obligations that we've signed into law in treaties.
You have to go back and look at how this withdrawal agreement came about. And I'm sorry to say about the Conservative Party, and David Gauke knows this from me in private correspondence, that actually the Conservative Party here is the problem. The problem with the Conservative Party is that they're split right down the middle on Brexit, and they haven't been able to get a coherent approach to Brexit. The reason we have a lousy withdrawal agreement is because the Conservative Party couldn't cohere around an agreement.
OK, so just to clarify, because the Conservative Party, the government, the Parliament signed this into law in December.
Absolutely.
So is what you're saying...
Not in December, in January.
In January,
it's an important difference. They had between the 13th of December, when Boris Johnson won his majority, and the 23rd of January, when it was signed into law...
Well, to be fair, I think they had 3 days, didn't they, to analyse it? They had very little time to analyse it.
But Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, had enough time to say that agreement was struck when I was in a constitutional crisis. That agreement was struck when Britain's back was against a wall. And by the way, the EU acted in utter bad faith for the 3 years between 2016 and 2019.
It was struck, though. It was signed.
Can I just finish?
No, because I think this is important.
No,
it's not about the quality of the deal. It's about whether you sign it or not.
I am not in any way trying to denigrate the point that you're making. But I think it's very important that you go back to the evolution of this agreement, which came out of a constitutional crisis in the UK, which was fed by the European Union. The Northern Irish issue was weaponised, forgive me for using a military metaphor, it was weaponised by the EU against the United Kingdom, and in the court of public opinion, and this is the important thing, in the court of public opinion, if we were to repudiate the withdrawal agreement now, which is what I think we should do, we would be found to be absolutely honourable. The EU has treated the United Kingdom with utter contempt, and we must fight back, and actually I think the Prime Minister has been too timid.
Are you suggesting that the court of public opinion is more important than the rule of law?
The court of public opinion, this is a political matter, Emily.
Is the court of public opinion more important than the rule of law? It's not a political matter if our allies and our international obligations are broken. I'll tell you what is
utterly vital is the best interest of the United Kingdom. And
David Gauke.
If our future as a country outside the European Union is going to be one as a country that is not trusted, that is seen as to be unreliable, then I'm afraid it's going to be pretty cold out there. That's not how we are going to prosper in future. And look, there are plenty of things which I don't like about with the withdrawal agreement. I didn't stand as a Conservative at the last general election, but the Conservative Party did stand in support of the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol. It won a majority. It'd be very strange if it was to now turn its back on that. And as I say, it would leave us with a terrible reputation as being unreliable and flaky. And that's not what our country should be about.
David Gauke, Ben Habib, thank you very much.
Thank you.
From next Monday, we will be put under